Before I go too far, I just want to point out that internally within CSA, the eDNA program falls within our forestry sector, even though it is water, mining, and everything else. So that's why I have forestry up here. So my eDNA journey started at PISCeS 5 years ago, so thank you for inviting me today. 5 years ago, no one really knew about standards in the eDNA world. I came with a colleague of mine, we started a conversation, and I walked away feeling a little tarred and feathered. People felt standards stimulated innovation, that you couldn't undertake research, that it was really telling you how to do everything without any leeway to move around. So I think over the last 5 years, we've really come to an understanding from what I've seen today, when most presentations say there is a need for standardization. So it's been a great journey over the last 5 years, and I think, Bob, even you're on board now. Sorry to point you out. But Bob was one of the key people that really kept me on my toes to justify the need for standards. And I think we swayed you over to the dark side. So the other thing I think I need to defend myself before we get into the eDNA conversation here is there were no whips involved. Okay? There were no whips involved. But I do admit that sometimes it was like herding very, very smart cats. And that is a high compliment, because as most of my committee members know, I have 3 cats that walk back and forth along my screen all meeting, and sometimes they do cause interesting things. Right, Chris? Inside joke, I apologize. So why are we here? This is a picture that I'd like to show. This is an amazing picture of Canada's water bodies. It's made up of 2 million lakes, rivers, and streams, and 2.6 million water bodies. This just shows the importance of water, why we do this, why we care about this, why this is a passion for us. Water is so important to us because it's everywhere. It really makes up our nation. It makes up our provincial borders. You can see the Great Canadian Shield. You can see so many important areas to our industries, society as a whole. So I'd just like to start with this, to bring water into context. It is so important to us, and it's just also an amazing picture. So CSA Group, who are we? What are we? When I talk to people and tell them what I do, the first thing I get is toilets, steel-toe boots. That's CSA Group, right? That's what you all know. You see our little logo on the backs of toilets, on the plumbing, you name it, on our safety boots. But we're so much more than that. We are an accredited standards organization, which is one side of our business. The other side with the toilets and the steel-toe boots is completely different than our standards side. We are a non-profit organization. We do not make profit off of the sales of standards. We do it as a societal benefit. We have over 2,000 employees in 13 countries. We have 10,000 volunteer members that write our standards on our behalf. Even though I have a technical background in water, I cannot contribute one single iota of technical knowledge to a standard. That is up to you folks here. My role is to lead the process and help get it from fruition to completion and publication at the end, and then manage it and promote it over the next 5 years once it's published. We have also over 3,000 standards in 12 technical areas, from nuclear, health, construction, environment, you name it. We've been doing this for over 102 years. CSA Group wrote the first technical accredited Canadian standard, which was a bridge standard 102 years ago. And from there, we've just been creating standards every year and cycling them and editing them and reformatting them every 5 years. So our vision, and it's a really broad vision because we do have so many technical areas that we do represent, but it is really to create a better, safer, and more sustainable world where standards work for people and businesses. We're not trying to tell businesses what to do. We're trying to work with them to support them and guide them where they need it. And standards. Well, standards are not just the one standard that you print out and you reference when you need it. Our standards department really focuses on the safety, health, and environment and economic efficiency of a technical area. We undertake a lot of research at CSA Group, and this research really drives the development of standards. Where should we be supporting industry? Where should we be supporting technologies? What sequencing should we be doing it in? We don't just pick something up at whim here. There's a lot of thought that goes into the development of standards and the sequencing of it. Education. Education is a key part of CSA Group. We develop training programs for our standards. We go out, we interact with stakeholders. We tell them about standards like this, because many of you may not know the standards process. It's very nebulous to many. And then advocacy. This is key. I can write as many standards as I want, but without advocacy, there is no uptake and adoption of these standards. And that's really the strength of the standard, is when it's adopted for use. Before that, it's just a piece of paper with really great technical information until it's adopted for use, and then that's where the benefit really comes into play. So what are the value of standards? Well, there can be a cost reduction to a technique, a process, an industry. Interoperability, regulatory compliance, market access. Consultants can gain market access by following and learning from a standard. It can provide a competitive advantage, and a key point here is it can limit the legal liability and exposure that a company has, because they are using an accredited, approved standard from a very, very formal process. So that is a key piece to know about using one of CSA's standards, or any other SEO standards really, as long as it's accredited, is it can limit your legal liability. And then it also helps reduce environmental impacts. So what is a standard? Well, the standard stipulates minimum requirements. We aren't telling people how to do everything. We're providing minimum recommended guidelines from experts within your community. Something that all of my committee members really get tired of hearing is consensus. Nothing is included in the standard if it's not agreed upon on a consensus basis by the full committee. If it's not agreed upon, it doesn't get in. You put it in the parking lot for the next edition 5 years down the road, and then we have that discussion again. So all content within the standard is based on consensus. Balanced stakeholders. We have a balanced matrix for our committees. What that means is that one group, one sector of an industry cannot drive the development and content of a standard. We have equal representation from different bodies, for example, academia, regulatory agencies, industry, and that equal representation allows for those broad discussions to happen. So it is a broad standard, and it can encompass the knowledge and expertise and needs of most, again, on consensus. CSA standards are accredited standards. We've been around for 102 years. So having that CSA brand and name on a standard provides credibility to the standard itself. But regulatory agencies, industries trust CSA. So it provides a lot of credibility to the standard. And our standards are published for a 5-year period. Once they're completed and follow the 18-month process, it's published for 5 years. What's the difference between a standard and a guideline? Well, a guideline really explains how things can work, what you need to understand. It's got a lot of background information. What a standard is, it is really the specific requirements you need to achieve an end result. It has shalls, it has shoulds. If it's a shall, you shall do it if it is if it's adopted into a regulatory policy. And again, I put this in for Bob because, again, I have never forgotten it. Standards does not stimulate research. You can follow the standard, but you can still change anything you want in it. And standards are voluntary documents. Until it's adopted by a regulatory agency or a company, it is voluntary. But once it becomes adopted into regulatory policy, then that's where those shalls and shoulds come to play. You shall do this for success if you are working, say, on a DFO project. And I'm running out of time here, so I'll just hurry a little bit more. So the development of the CSA standard is 18 months. From conception to publication, it is an 18-month process. Where the bulk of the work happens is in this meetings component, where we spend 6 months working as a committee, meeting, drafting the content. This is where a lot of the fun happens. So if you have not been part of the CSA technical community so far, and you want to, feel free to reach out, because it's a lot of fun interacting with your colleagues to develop this. and I hope I'm right. From there, we send our standards out for public review for a period of 2 months where anyone in the general public can comment on our standards. With those comments, once those are submitted, the technical committee has to address every single public comment that's come in, whether it's 5, whether it's 2,000. We have to go through every single one and address that, whether it's included in the standard or not, consensus basis, but every single comment has to be addressed. And that's one of the strengths of the standards process. After that, it's just through procedural processes until publication, and then publication is for 5 years. What have we done to date? Well, Karen kind of stole the thunder a little early, but after the PISCeS meeting, we did a research paper which really outlined the development of the standards so far. We've currently published one. Our next one will be this fall, and I'm looking to initiate a 3rd one, but we're just trying to secure funding for that. I've got partial funding, or tentative partial funding through Parts Canada so far, but please keep in mind that I am looking for other partners to fund the next standard, which would be the field methodologies, field study design. So this would be the proposed content of it. I won't go through that because I am almost out of time. But this seems to be the one that most of the eDNA community is really looking forward to. We've got enough committee members. We can currently look for more committee members. But we could populate the committee tomorrow and start the standard right away. But again, it's just relying on funding at the moment. And that's it for me. I rushed through it, but that is CSA at a very short glance.